especially for people.
Yes, I was just looking at that. I was just checking my screen out. But again, I just want to reiterate in case you all did not hear me earlier, that we are here with Mr. Dana Middleton. He's the owner operator of Best Fares for Travel, hailing out of Dallas-Fort Worth area. Of course, this is your host, Geechee Lion for Geechee Lion Journey. And we want to let Mr. Middleton introduce us to what our subject matter is tonight. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, what we want to talk about this evening is what makes a person consider, especially men, the Philippines for retirement.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of compelling reasons for that. Matter of fact, there's so many, I don't know if I can cover this in one session. But let's start off. I want to start off with, first of all and foremost, is language. You know, a lot of times we take language for granted. Even here in the United States, we all speak English to a certain degree. And the beautiful thing about the Philippines is the fact that everybody speaks English to a certain degree there as well, so you can communicate. Plus, all of the signage, okay, is in English. Okay, so that helps to make it very easy to navigate. So from the time you land in the airport, all the signage is in English. And that's because English is taught from kindergarten in their educational system.
Mm.
So that should take away a lot of fear about being able to communicate, not only in pleasurable situations, but heaven forbid, if it's an emergency, people can understand what you're saying. Okay? So that is to me, that is the number one reason for considering the Philippines for retirement. Number two, a stable government. You know, a lot of people don't realize this, but the Philippines is a democracy. It has a president who serves for 6 terms or 6 years. 6 years. It has a Senate or a Congress where you have the senators who serve for 6 years also, and they have a House of Representatives which serves for 3-year terms. So it's a very stable and democratic government. That goes a long way in helping you understand that the laws, most of the laws of the Philippines stem from common sense. Okay? There are some laws that are based against their culture, but if you stay within the laws of common sense, you're going to be fine. You're not going to have any trouble whatsoever. Now, once you visit, because there's so many different places to go, once you decide where you want to go and visit, what you're going to find is that most areas are divided into districts that are called barangays. And these barangays are basically neighborhoods that are run by local representatives who elect a barangay captain. So, for example, if you have a dispute with your neighbor, okay, and I'm speaking in terms of as a retiree, if you have a dispute with your neighbor, let's say he's burning trash and the wind is blowing it through your house all the time. Okay, what you do, the first step is you go to the barangay captain and you file a complaint. At that point, the barangay captain calls the 2 parties in and you sit down with him as a moderator and settle the dispute. Now, if it's something where it's more violent, then the barangay captain has the authority to call in the police.
Mm.
But very seldom in the Philippines does it get that far. Okay. Especially situations involving expats. Another reason to strongly consider the Philippines for retirement is that as a nation, the United States, we have a history that goes back to partnership, if not downright colonization of the Philippines since 1899.
Mm.
All right. I'll tell you how strong our relationship has been with the Philippines. During the Second World War, when the Japanese invaded the Philippines and overran our military bases there, over 100,000 Filipinos sacrificed their lives in order to defend and protect U.S. soldiers that got left behind. Matter of fact, the largest U.S. military cemetery outside of Arlington National Cemetery is in the Philippines, in Manila. So, and of course, since the Second World War and since the Philippines became independent, they have been, for the most part, an active military partner with joint training exercises, defense programs and practices. So we have a very, very close relationship with the U.S. military and the U.S. government. Now, because I'm saying that, I also want to bring out the fact that there is a lot of U.S. expats who are former military who live in the Philippines. A lot of them have established relationships, such as girlfriends and wives here in the Philippines, and are very, very successfully married and happy. And in a lot of ways, it becomes a mesh of the perfect relationship between men and women, which I'll go into at a little later time. Now, as far as geography, okay, one of the things that I hear all the time is, well, what part of the Philippines should I retire to? Okay, that is a very tricky question because, first of all, you need to understand that the Philippines is from the northernmost point to the southernmost point is 1,150 miles. There are 7,636 islands that make up the archipelago of the Philippines, which means you can fit the Philippines within the boundaries of the state of California.
California, San Francisco.
So, yeah, you can fit the boundaries of the whole country within the boundaries of the state of California. So, that also touches on relationships too that I'll get into later, because it's often I hear people say, well, if you're going to retire and you're going to settle with a Filipina, you want to be near her family. Well, that's not necessarily so, because within that 1,150 miles, you're within a close proximity of her family anyway, no matter where you live. Okay. The largest island in the Philippines is Luzon, and Mindanao is number 2, followed by Samar. Then some places will call Negros an island, but it's actually 2 islands. There's Negros Occidental and there's Negros Oriental.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Then there's Palawan, which is the furthest western island in the archipelago. Then there's Cebu, Bohol, and Masbate. Oh, interesting enough. One of the things, and we'll talk about the climate in just a second, but one of the things that most people who retire see themselves, on a beach somewhere. Okay.
Right.
Well, there are beaches and then there are beaches.
Beaches.
Okay.
They're beaches.
If you've ever been to some of the American beaches, in the holidays, you could sometimes question, why did I decide to come here? Because everybody's here.
Mm-hmm.
The Philippines has the 5th largest coastline in the world because it's so many islands. All right. So the beaches are never so crowded that it's uncomfortable to relax or you can't find a good spot. Now, let's talk about climate a little bit. All right. We know that climate has a bearing on your well-being and your mental state. All right. The Philippines has a tropical climate, and it's hot and it's humid. Now, most expats will complain about the heat when they first get there, but I will tell you, it doesn't get any hotter than if you were living in Houston, and it doesn't get as humid as if you lived in Houston. So Houston and probably Tampa, Florida would be 2 places in the United States that if you've ever been, you get a feel for, and I would also throw in New Orleans to get a feel for what the climate feels like.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are 3 distinctive climates in the Philippines.
All right.
There's hot and dry. That is from March until May. Okay. Then there is the rainy season. That's from June through November. However, I want to say that when I say rainy season, it very, very seldom rains all day or all night. Okay. Because it is an archipelago and there's always a breeze coming off the ocean. When it rains, it does cool things down. And the rain will last sometimes maybe a couple of hours, sometimes less than an hour. But because it's rained that day, it's called part of the rainy season. But as far as being in a place like Seattle, Portland, Maine, the state of Maine, areas that typically get a lot of rain, it's not going to be a torrential rainfall all day and all night. And the 3rd season is called the cool and dry season. And that's typically when you see your greatest influx of tourists. And that is between December to February. Okay. And to be honest with you, if you're retiring from an area that has a metropolitan area that, let's say, has more than 100,000 people, you're going to love the Philippines for its peace and serenity. But you're also going to appreciate the tourist seasons, when people from all over the world come there, and the energy and the pulse of the communities increases. And it's just fun to be around. Now, one other thing I want to talk about today is the money. Okay. The money is very interesting. Okay. And that's because there are 7 denominations of bills. Now, the Filipino dollar is actually called the peso. That's its monetary name. And it is broken up into $1,000 bill, a $500 bill, a $200 bill, a $100 bill, a $50 bill, a $20 bill, and a 10 peso bill. Now, anything below that is in coins, okay? So they don't have a $1, 1 peso. It's a coin.
Mm-hmm.
5 pesos is a coin.
Right.
And you could actually find a 20 peso coin as well, okay? But those are the 7 denominations of bills that are typically used. The Philippines is a developing nation. So people will refer to it sometimes as third world, but they refer to it out of ignorance because it is not a third world nation. It is a developing nation. And therefore, the banking system, since we're talking about money, is strong and in some cases is quite compatible with U.S. Banking and financial systems. So if you're considering retiring to the Philippines, it's quite easy to transfer your money from the Philippines, from the U.S. or other countries to the Philippines.
Right.
Okay. It's more about learning the way to do it than trying to figure it out as far as how to do it. I know that kind of sounds like the same.
It sounds like the same thing.
but
But I know exactly what you mean there with
you can do direct deposits.
That's right.
You can do direct deposits from your accounts. For example, what I do is I have my Social Security and my pension, of course, are direct deposited into my accounts. And then I have those accounts direct deposited into my local banks in the Philippines.
Right.
They do have ATMs in the Philippines.
Yes.
But you need to know when to use the ATMs because it's basically a cash and carry society here. You don't want to go to your ATMs on Saturday morning because that's when everybody else goes.
They will draw all the money.
The ATMs can run out. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're better off trying to get money out of an ATM on a Tuesday and Wednesday or Thursday than you are on a Friday or Saturday.
Makes sense.
Since we're talking about money,
Money.
you should always have some cash on hand, okay? Because every place, like when you go to the market, unless you're going to an expat supermarket, they won't take a credit card.
Right.
Everybody takes cash. So you always want to keep cash on hand.
Correct.
You also need to know that unless it's one of the major hospitals, if you have to go to a hospital, you're going to need to pay cash to be treated. You will not be treated in a hospital, especially a provincial hospital, without presenting a cash deposit first. Now, that may sound scary, but here's the thing. By putting up a cash deposit, they don't have to go hunting around to try to find out if whatever insurance you have is going to be good for whatever they need to do to you. So that cuts down the wait in the waiting rooms substantially. Now, since I'm talking about healthcare, and of course, healthcare always ties into money also, typically, I'll give you a few examples of the financial cost of healthcare. I have a good friend of mine who just had a baby, and the cost of them having the baby at the hospital was about 30,000 pesos, which in American money came out to, I think, a little over $2,500.
Mm-hmm.
You are not going to have a baby born and delivered in the US for $2,500.
No.
An expat can buy premium health care insurance here in the Philippines once you're a resident. Well, as an expat, you can buy it for approximately 500 to 600 pesos a year, depending on how much coverage you want. But
That
once you
doesn't sound like
become,
much. That doesn't sound like much at
it's
all.
not.
500 pesos?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And no, $500 to $600 a
Oh,
year,
oh, $500, $600. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's like correct that.
a year.
Yeah.
Now, if you become a resident with the proper visas, then you'll pay about $350 a year.
Oh, okay, that's nothing.
So, you know, part of retirement, of course, is peace of mind. So when you know that you're paying $350 as a resident for complete health care,
Yeah.
okay, that takes a lot of stress off your mind.
Sure it does.
Okay. And of course, the less stress you deal with, the chances are you're less chances of stroke
Mm-hmm.
and problems with your heart that come from stress.
Right.
Because after all, we are talking about living in the Philippines in retirement.
Yes.
So I also want to bring up the fact that there are cities in the Philippines, since we're talking about healthcare, that do have 911. And a lot of people don't realize this when we talk about healthcare. The number one export of the Philippines is medical care workers, doctors and nurses and dental assistants.
I know that very well. I've been working in hospitals for about 35 years. So I know about that.
So unless you're in a real remote provincial area, you should be able to get pretty good health care if you take care of yourself. Yeah. Now, if you've got issues, I'm going to say you probably need to get a doctor's clearance in the US before you start thinking about whether or not you want to retire in the Philippines.
Yeah, that's a big deal. I want to say, myself and just many other people probably that are listening here, well, that's one of the biggest, if not the biggest consideration for anyone thinking about becoming an expat and moving abroad permanently is what is the state of your health care? Now, the thing about most of your retirees are going to be of quote unquote advanced age, 50s, 60s. You do have some that were lucky or fortunate enough to be able to retire early. I kind of envy the military that were able to go in at 20, 22 years old and do their 20 years and get out. No, I considered it, but I didn't follow through on it. But absolutely, that's one of the biggest things to get that full checkup and, get those big issues resolved. Yes.
Well, and since you bring up military retirees, yes, we see a lot of military retirees, disabled veterans that will come to the Philippines, most of which they were stationed here. Yeah. They have an idea of what the Philippines was like as far as government, climate, currency, geography, all the things that we mentioned earlier. Right. And they have found that it was far better for them to take their pensions and come to the Philippines. And oh, I almost forgot. Currently, the exchange rate in the Philippines, since we talk about money,
Yeah.
is about 55.5 pesos for each American dollar.
Right.
Now, okay, let me break that down. A $1,400 one-bedroom apartment in the United States at 675 square feet
Mm-hmm.
will, like I said, will run you about $1,400 a month. You can rent a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home at 1,500 square feet for about, using the current exchange rate, about $316.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. You know, I was on live with one of my top 5 Filipino vloggers today, Rebuti, who many of you all may be familiar with, but I was kind of discussing with her, you know, what kind of rent they were paying, and I wasn't trying to be boastful or anything. I was just pointing out the fact that I'm in Chicago, and I could rent out the whole building where she is for what they paying for rent. You know, if I took that Chicago money and went over there, I could rent out some buildings. You know.
Yeah, and you know, when I use that comparison about a 1-bedroom apartment in the United States as opposed to a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home in the Philippines, I am not talking about a bamboo built home. I am talking about a modern concrete with steel rebar built home with rolled concrete roof for insulation, storm windows in a safe community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, I was going to bring up safety, and I'll just touch on it because I'm going to go more into safety when we start talking about relationships.
Yeah, and a friendly atmosphere, I think you talked about.
Right.
That'll be in the next segment. Yeah.
That'll be in the next segment. That's correct.
But today we want to just recap here what you did go over. And these were, I'll say, 7 reasons or 7 areas of consideration for anyone contemplating choosing the Philippines as a retirement destination. Now, we're not talking about vacation. You just going there for a week, 2 weeks, and a month. No, we're talking about going there to stay, to leave the rat race, leave the hamster wheel, if you will, here in America. These are some of the top reasons. One is that language. You don't have to worry. You can still speak your English. Most people there speak English, so that's easy. You don't have that consideration. As long as you stay like in the metropolitan areas, the more closer you are to that, more the people are going to speak English and speak it very well, better than some Americans. All the signs in English. You walk down the street, you see the names of the stores and storefront is all English. The street signs is English, so that's very important. Next thing, we're talking about the government. They have a democratic government. Some people may not care for that, but it does give some level of stability and predictability in dealing with your levels of government, whether it be at the barangay level or higher. And then also right in that is related to their history. They have a history with the United States government, which is, a democracy. So they took some of their, I guess, cues, if you will, for governing more than likely from the United States of America there. So there's some familiarity there with that. Also, we talked about the geography, the archipelago. So many thousands of islands, but if you put the whole area of the islands together, they can fit within the state of California. So
Hey, you know what? Thank you for reminding me, and I apologize for cutting you off.
No, it's okay.
But there are actually areas there are actually areas in the Philippines where the average temperature or for a high is in the mid 60s.
Oh, okay. That'd be great. I mean, some people would love that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I know people that live in certain areas of Luzon that are in the mountains.
Yeah, they gotta be in the mountains.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful areas. Of course, they're not around the beaches.
Right.
However, they've got access to the beaches on a relatively short drive,
Yeah.
and the average temperature is 63 degrees year round.
Yeah. They can't beat that. I mean, I like that. So that's the geography, and then that climate, all that's because of the islands and right being in the ocean, all that is right there together. You don't have to deal with the big killer frost as you have to do in Chicago and the northeastern states and Minnesota and like that. You don't have to deal with any of that. So, like, so I come to the Philippines, they got to worry about bringing no big heavy jackets, only a light jacket, as you say, a light windbreaker, and or a poncho, that a light poncho that will give you some protection against the rain.
But you know what? And this is funny. Whenever you go to a place, especially if you retire, you want to fit in, right?
Yeah.
So, in the process of fitting in, you'll start realizing, like during the rainy season,
Yeah.
that the natives, basically, you don't see a lot of natives using umbrellas during the rainy season.
Yeah.
You'll see more umbrellas during the hot, dry season,
right,
to protect them from the
from the
sun,
sun. Yeah.
than you will than you'll see during the rainy season.
Yeah.
Most of the natives are running around in the little windbreakers that have the hoodies.
Yeah, I got you. So that's something to look at there. And then the money is very important. You know, I watch the exchange rates almost every day. 55 is pretty good. A few months back, it got up to around 58 or so.
Yeah.
But one thing that I would advise people to do, just as an aside, is if you're about, and we're going to talk about this because we're getting into the 90-day, we're going to get into the 90-day expat countdown here, is to watch that exchange rate. If you got some thousands of dollars sitting in the bank idle, you need to be exchanging them for Philippine pesos. Don't let them sit in there in American dollar. You need to start. I would suggest they do have Philippine banks based here in America that you can deal with. So you can already have your peso account already set up, already have your account set up for where your retirement is going to go. Yes, I've already done that. So, I mean, I can do that right now.
There are banks all over the United States, just depending on what cities that you're around.
I'm in Chicago.
And where their branches are. But if you're in Des Moines, Iowa, it might be a little more difficult. However, you can start. There's a strategy of how to convert your dollars into pesos before you leave.
Yeah.
And I talk about that a lot in my consultancy, because I have guys that are always asking me, how much money should I take on retirement? And how much money should I take for a vacation? And there are two totally different attitudes that you have to take about what your agenda is going to be. So for anybody that wants to get into that, they can get in contact with me, and I'll do a consultancy with them. And we generally can talk about anything you want to talk about as far as how much money do I need to get started when I retire there? Yeah. How much money do I need just to go visit? How many trips do I need before I decide whether or not I even want to go to retire there? So there's an art to it, but it will be greatly to your benefit, and you'll come back all the more enthused and excited about retiring then.
Yeah, and so that money is a big deal. Like I said, that's something that we're going to
Yeah.
get into the nuts and bolts of that at the future thing. The last thing was that healthcare, and
Yeah.
the best thing about the healthcare is you really need to try. You really want to be in the best health that you can be in before you even consider going there. You go get all your checkups, that they have out there, your heart, your kidney, your lungs, your blood, your sugar, your blood pressure, all of that. Get all
And-
that checked out.
And don't be afraid to ask your doctor to provide you with printed copies of the results before you leave his office.
Yes.
Don't tell yourself, well, before I leave, I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna get you to put everything together. No, you start a file on your health care so that you have a complete package to present to your doctors.
That's
When
right.
you retire, not only in the Philippines, but Spain, anywhere in the world.
Mexico, yeah, that makes a good difference.
Exactly.
Yeah, so anyway, I'd like to thank Dana Middleton again. You can reach him at bestfares4travel.com. That's the number 4. Best Fares for Travel. He's the owner operator. He has a travel consultancy. Get with him. Dana's gonna be back in the future. We're doing a whole series, y'all. So come back, like, share, subscribe, and tell everybody to come back and join us on Geechee Lion's journey. And we like to say, peace be unto you. Assalamu alaikum.